and go.
Oops, sorry. Going?
Yeah.
Eat it all, Graham. I had to do this on my cell phone because we had a bunch of shit going on at the shop tonight. So I'm going to try and talk loud and show you those things we were talking about the other night. So these are two of my liquid cooled bikes. The one on the left is done 100% right. The one on the right is done mostly wrong, but still works perfectly. I'm going to show you the fitting differences and how I use these basic parts from Home Depot and why I chose those. Yeah, so we're just gonna get to that. So what we're gonna start off with is my first liquid cooled I've ever had. I thought there's something being thrown at me. First liquid cooled thing I ever had is this. This is a Polini head for Motorbicane. Treats had like 100 of these in the early 2000s. Took them forever to sell them, so they never ordered more. And as you can see, this one's kind of fucked up. But I was talking to you about how the threading on this is standard. Even in the early 2000s, Polini was using the standard threading that is the same shit you can buy for plumbing. This little piece, this is new. I bought this a year or two ago from the plumbing aisle at Home Depot, and as you can see on the threads, they're standard. And yeah, this one's all jacked up because it was mostly stripped. This was obviously used, but this same standard, same threading. Home Depot. And then I had to Loctite in because it was all fucked up. So even Polini was doing it back in the day. They were just using general parts. Now these are a little smaller. As I was saying, I use this thicker hosing from Home Depot. And let me grab a caliper. I want to say this stuff is like 3/4 of an inch or an inch. Come on, calipers. 29 millimeters, so whatever that is in inches. I'll let you decipher that, you're the math guy. But I just use this hosing and then run it to my liquid cooled head down here. These fittings are also standard. You can buy these from Home Depot. They have an O-ring on the side, they plug in, and that way you can shift it at whatever angle you want. And this is the MLM liquid cooled head. And then plumbed straight to it. Hot goes to the top, cool goes to the side of the cylinder. Now this cylinder this particular liquid cooled head has a little bit of an issue, and this is something you can do better. If you look, the input and the output, they can be switched, it doesn't matter. They're in the same position. Ideally, you don't want that. You want the cool, which goes to the bottom of the radiator on the side, and you want the hot coming out of the top. Now this is problematic when you're talking French bikes because there's obviously no room. So if you compare that to the Polini, that's why they come off the top of the head. That way you've got your cool on the bottom, your hot on the top. So as the liquid gets hot, it comes out of the top, goes to the top of your radiator, and as it cools, it settles down through the radiator, then goes back through your cool line and hits the bottom of your head, and the whole process keeps going, and that's how the thermosapin works. The problem with this head is the heat exchange isn't particularly even because your in and out are on the same plane. It does wind up working. This bike runs at a consistent 210 to 280, and it runs about 55, 56 miles an hour at about 11 or 12,000 RPMs, and it'll do that all day because it stays very cool. Now, if Sarah turns the camera here a little bit, on this side, this is the XK80 radiator. Sometimes they're XK85s.
Keep it the same area.
The one that you linked to and I said that I used, you can see it's mounted interestingly on this bike, but it stays in place. And the problem with underbody mounting for radiators on some bikes is there's no mounting points on Peugeots. And the tank is the frame, so welding is problematic. So I like using these radiators because you can make mounts wherever you like. So you got your Home Depot that we talked about. Home Depot, even on the MLM heads. Now if you come over and look at this other bike, this is where I really used a lot of the plumbing. And this does work. It's done wrong, but it works just fine. Sorry. I'm using that same hosing from Home Depot. And these are 3/4 inch 90-degree elbow bends from the plumbing section. So on this cylinder, you've got this should be the cold intake. I have this hooked to the top of the radiator, and the radiator is a little too far away. Thermosapin works best, as we were discussing, when the radiator is closer to the point. However, this is a stock late model cylinder, so it's not creating a ton of heat. This bike runs about 43 miles an hour at a consistent 300 to 310 degrees. But it's fine. I need to replumb this at some point, but you can see that I'm just using these basic parts from Home Depot. And now this is a full liquid cooled jacket. So you've got your hot on top, and you see how it projects out, and then your cool on the side. And then we'll actually pop back to the other bike because they're both running the same radiators, and I'm probably being jumbled here, and I hope I get all the information that you needed. But the other real advantage of this radiator and the Thermosapin setup in general is you've got your overflow. So if the liquid gets too hot, it flows through my overflow, which runs right here, and then it's just this is ironically a Polini liquid Polini coolant. That's all it is. It just plumbs right in. So if the coolant in your Thermosapin system gets too hot and starts to boil, instead of blowing your lines, which happens in a closed system, it flows through that overflow line into your boost bottle. And in that bottle, it cools down really quick. And as it cools down, it's naturally sucked back into the system. You don't have to take this off later and dump it back into the system. As it cools, it gets sucked right back through that line. So no pump necessary. You're running complete Thermosapin, and you're using basic ass parts from Home Depot. Now the other thing, the outputs and inputs on the radiator are slightly smaller than the outputs on the liquid cooled head, but that's not a problem. You just use a little bit of nylon hosing, stick it over, and then stick that on, and you don't have any leaks. Easy peasy, done. So I hope this helps when you're casting those cylinder heads. I really look forward to testing them because liquid cooled heads are much cooler than full liquid cooled jackets because they give you the advantage to run any cylinder you want. This happens to be an Athena cylinder. If you're looking at my MBKs, I've got a DR cylinder, a Melosi, and I'm gonna be testing the one that you send me for Motivacane. It currently has a 50cc aerosol, which is a repop of a stock cylinder, but I'm gonna switch that to something more aggressive to test it. That's gonna be, let's see, that's 40 millimeters. I think that'll be 45 millimeters as you're cutting your heads, 45 to 47, so it'll be fine. But the advantage of these is parts you can find locally. I don't need to go search through the radiator hosing at an auto parts store. I can go to any hardware store is gonna have a plumbing section. You've got it. And then I can use these on any cylinder I want. So, hope this helps. If I didn't answer any of your questions, please send them my way. I really look forward to seeing those heads. So, thanks, Graham.